The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers opened with a sound like distant thunder. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped through, her simple black uniform a stark contrast to the rainbow of alien colors that filled the vast room. She had trained for this moment her entire life, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of standing before the three greatest powers in the galaxy. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering and politics. Built on the neutral world of Nexus Prime, it rose like a crystal mountain from the planet's surface. Inside, the ceiling disappeared into darkness above, while holographic stars wheeled slowly overhead, representing the thousands of worlds under Council protection. Elena walked down the central aisle, her footsteps echoing in the silence. On her left sat the Zephyrian delegation, their crystalline bodies catching and reflecting the chamber's lights like living prisms. Their leader, Chancellor Mordak, stood nearly 3 meters tall, his faceted head turning to track her movement with mechanical precision. The Zephyrians had ruled their corner of the galaxy for over 2,000 years, through pure logic and mathematical perfection. On her right, the Kavari clans occupied their section with military bearing. These warrior poets looked almost human at first glance until you noticed their forearms and the ritual scars that covered their bronze skin. General Thakmor wore his battle honors like a constellation across his chest, each medal representing a world brought into the fold through honorable combat. The Kavari believed strength and honor were the only true currencies in the universe. At the far end of the chamber, the Stellan Consortium had arranged themselves in perfect formation. These tall, pale beings with their large black eyes controlled more trade routes than any other species. Merchant Prince Veltar wore robes that shifted color with his mood, currently a cool blue that suggested cautious optimism. The Stellans had learned long ago that economic power lasted longer than military might. Elena reached the center of the chamber and stopped at the speaker's podium. 300 years of human dreams had led to this moment. Ever since humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel, they had known others were out there. The discovery of the galactic community had been the greatest moment in human history. Ambassador Vasquez of Earth, Chancellor Mordak's voice resonated through hidden speakers, each word precise and calculated. "We welcome you to this historic occasion. Your species has been observed and evaluated. We have found you adequate." Elena kept her face neutral. 3 months of surveillance by the galactic powers had preceded this invitation. Ships had appeared in Earth's solar system without warning, scanning everything from military installations to shopping centers. The message had been clear: we are watching, and we are judging. General Thakmor stood, his forearms spreading wide in what Elena knew was a gesture of grudging respect. "The Kavari have seen humans fight. You show courage, though your tactics are unusual. We can work with courage." Merchant Prince Veltar's robes shifted to a warmer yellow. "Human creativity and trade has been noted. Your economic systems show potential with proper guidance." Elena nodded politely. "We are honored by your attention." Chancellor Mordak gestured, and the chamber's lights dimmed. A 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared in the air above them, spinning slowly. Thousands of worlds glowed in different colors, showing which power controlled what territory. "Observe," the Chancellor said. "The Zephyrian hegemony controls the galactic core, where logic and order bring peace to 300 billion souls. The Kavari clans guard the rim worlds, where strength protects the weak. The Stellan Consortium manages the trade routes that connect all civilized worlds. For 800 years, this system has brought stability to the galaxy." The map zoomed in to show Earth. A tiny blue dot in what Elena could see was basically empty space. The nearest galactic territories were light years away. "Your species has developed in isolation," General Thakmor continued. "This has led to interesting approaches to problem solving. But isolation breeds weakness. Alone, humans face threats that would destroy them. United with us, they can find their proper place in galactic civilization." Elena had read the classified reports about those threats. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. Beyond the Council's borders lurked things that still gave seasoned diplomats nightmares. Machine intelligences that had consumed entire star systems, biological horrors that bred in the void between galaxies, ancient powers that slept fitfully in the galactic deep. Merchant Prince Veltar stepped forward, his robes now a confident gold. "We offer humanity junior membership in the Galactic Council. This is extraordinary. Most species must prove themselves over centuries before receiving such consideration. The terms appeared as floating text around the chamber. Elena read them carefully, though she had memorized every word from the preliminary negotiations. Junior membership meant protection under galactic law. It meant access to technology that could advance human civilization by thousands of years. It meant never again being alone in the dark. It also meant restrictions. Human military expansion would be limited to their home system. New colonies would require council approval. Human ships would carry transponders marking them as junior members, subject to inspection by any council force. Chancellor Mordak's crystalline features caught the light as he leaned forward. The terms are generous. Your species gains protection, guidance, and access to galactic civilization. In return, you accept our wisdom in matters of expansion and development. Elena could feel the weight of human history pressing down on her. Every explorer who had looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Every dreamer who had imagined humanity spread across the galaxy. Every child who had asked if we were alone in the universe. She thought about the classified briefings she had received before leaving Earth. The real state of human technology and military capability. The projects hidden in deep space labs that the Council's scanners had somehow missed. The contingency plans that military leaders had developed in case these negotiations went badly. These terms require careful consideration, Elena said finally. My government will need time to review them with our people. The alien delegates exchanged what Elena had learned to recognize as satisfied expressions. General Thakmor's scars crinkled with something like amusement. Merchant Prince Veltar's robes shifted to a pleased purple. Of course, Chancellor Mordak replied. Such a momentous decision cannot be made hastily. How much time does your species require? Elena had been authorized to ask for up to 6 months. Standard galactic practice was for newly contacted species to spend at least that long in deliberation. Some took years, 1 month, she said. The chamber fell silent. Even the holographic stars seemed to pause in their rotation. Chancellor Mordak's crystalline head tilted in what Elena recognized as confusion. 1 month seems brief for such a decision. Humans work quickly when we need to, Elena replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What the galactic powers didn't know was that Elena's quantum communicator had been transmitting everything in real time. Every word, every gesture, every piece of information about galactic politics and military strength had been flowing back to Earth at faster than light speeds. As she spoke, teams of human analysts were already dissecting every detail of what they had learned. Military planners were updating their models of galactic force structures. Economists were analyzing trade patterns and resource flows. Anthropologists were studying alien body language and cultural cues. The Council expected a month of careful deliberation. What they would get was a month of the most intensive intelligence-gathering operation in human history. Elena bowed formally to the assembled delegates. I thank the Council for this generous offer. You will have our answer in exactly 30 days. As she walked back down the central aisle, Elena could feel alien eyes tracking her every move. They saw a primitive human, overwhelmed by the magnitude of galactic civilization, heading home to convince her leaders to accept their proper place in the established order. They had no idea they were watching a predator who had just finished studying her prey. 3 hours after Elena's transmission ended, every human intelligence network in the galaxy came alive. What the Council had mistaken for primitive curiosity was actually the most sophisticated reconnaissance operation in galactic history beginning to unfold. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the stealth ship Nighthawk, watching her tactical display update with new target information. The ship hung invisible in the void between stars. Its experimental cloaking systems bent light around its hull like water around a stone. To any scanner, this patch of space was empty. Ma'am, we're receiving the final target package from Fleet Command, her tactical officer reported. 17 Zephyrian military installations across the hegemony's core worlds. Sarah nodded, studying the data flowing across her screens. The Zephyrians had built their entire military doctrine around geometric perfection. Their fleets moved in mathematical formations that had never been defeated in 8 centuries of warfare. Each ship knew its exact position relative to every other ship in a complex 3-dimensional pattern that could adapt to any threat. It was beautiful. It was logical, and Sarah was going to learn exactly how to break it. Signal the Ghost Fleet, she ordered. Begin reconnaissance pattern Alpha. Remember, we're just curious human explorers who got lost. Across the galaxy, 12 identical stealth ships began their approach to Zephyrian space. Their mission was simple: get close enough to scan everything, record everything, and learn everything about how the galaxy's most powerful military actually worked. Meanwhile, in the gleaming towers of New Geneva Station, corporate executive Marcus Webb was having the most interesting conversation of his career. The Stellan trade representative across from him had no idea that Marcus had spent the last 72 hours memorizing every detail of galactic economics that Elena's transmission had contained. Mr. Webb, the alien said, its voice carrying the musical quality that all Stellans seem to possess. Your species shows remarkable potential for commerce, but you must understand galactic trade operates under very specific rules. Marcus leaned back in his chair, projecting the image of a slightly overwhelmed human businessman. In reality, his mind was working through commodity flows, transportation costs, and market structures at a speed that would have surprised his alien companion. These trade routes you control, Marcus said, gesturing at the holographic display showing major shipping lanes. They must be incredibly complex to manage. The Stellan's large black eyes seemed to brighten with pride. Indeed, we have spent millennia perfecting the art of commerce. Every trade route is precisely calculated for maximum efficiency. Every market is carefully balanced to prevent destabilizing fluctuations. Marcus nodded and asked more questions, each one carefully designed to extract another piece of the puzzle. How did they predict market trends? What happened when unexpected events disrupted their carefully planned systems? How did they handle competition? What the Stellan didn't realize was that Marcus wasn't just asking about galactic trade. He was performing an autopsy on it, learning exactly where to apply pressure to make the whole system dance to a human tune. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. James Running Bear was experiencing his own form of revelation. The anthropologist had managed to secure passage aboard a Kavari merchant vessel as a cultural observer. Now he sat in the ship's common area, sharing drinks with off-duty warriors and listening to their stories. The Kavari fascinated him. They were honor-bound warriors who had built their civilization on concepts of strength and courage. But James was beginning to understand that their honor system was far more complex than it appeared from the outside. Tell me about the ritual of crossed blades, James asked the scarred veteran sitting across from him. The Kavari's forearms gestured enthusiastically as he began explaining the intricate ceremony that decided challenges between warriors. Every word, every movement, every symbolic action had meaning that went back thousands of years. James absorbed it all, cataloging not just the cultural information, but the psychological framework that supported it. The Kavari weren't just strong. They were predictable. Their honor code created patterns of behavior that could be mapped, understood, and eventually used. Back on Earth, the data was flowing into the most secure facilities on the planet. Military analysts worked around the clock, building detailed models of galactic force structures. The Zephyrian hegemony's mathematical perfection was being reduced to equations that human computers could process and predict. Economic specialists tore apart the Stellan trade networks, looking for the hidden assumptions that kept their markets stable. Every successful economic system had weaknesses, and human economists had centuries of experience finding them. Cultural anthropologists studied everything they could learn about Kavari society, mapping the honor codes that governed their behavior. Humans had always been good at understanding other humans. Now they were applying that skill to understanding aliens. Admiral Rodriguez stood in the Situation Room beneath CENTCOM, watching displays that showed human activity across known space. Officially, the ships were conducting expanded exploration missions, following humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. Unofficially, they were gathering intelligence on a scale that would have impressed any general in human history. Admiral, we're getting reports that the Council powers have noticed increased human activity, his intelligence chief reported. So far, they're interpreting it as expected curiosity from a newly contacted species. Rodriguez nodded. That was exactly what they wanted the aliens to think. Let them believe humans were like every other primitive species they had encountered, scrambling to understand their betters while preparing to accept junior status in the galactic order. The truth was very different. Humans weren't scrambling to understand the galactic powers. They were systematically dissecting them. Commander Chen's Ghost Fleet had already identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in Zephyrian military doctrine. The mathematical precision that made their fleets invincible also made them predictable. Disrupt the geometric patterns they relied on, and the most powerful navy in the galaxy would be fighting blind. Marcus Webb had mapped the economic pressure points that kept Stellan markets stable. Their perfectly ordered trade system was actually remarkably fragile. Introduce the right kind of chaos at the right moment, and centuries of careful economic planning could unravel in days. Dr. Running Bear had found something even more valuable: the psychological keys to Kavari honor culture. The warriors who seemed so fearsome in battle were actually bound by rigid codes that could be turned against them by anyone who understood the rules well enough. As the days passed, human intelligence officers noticed something that would have alarmed the galactic powers if they had known about it. The three major civilizations didn't really understand each other. The Zephyrians thought in terms of mathematical logic and couldn't comprehend Kavari honor codes. The Stellans focused on profit margins and missed the cultural subtleties that drove both their allies' decisions. The Kavari respected strength but had never learned to think economically. They had achieved peace through separation of responsibilities, not through mutual understanding. And that gave humans an advantage that no one in the galaxy suspected. Elena's month-long deadline was approaching, and the council powers were already planning integration ceremonies. They expected humanity to accept junior membership and begin the long process of learning their place in galactic civilization. Instead, they were about to meet a species that had spent 30 days learning everything about them. The hunt was almost ready to begin. Elena walked into the council chambers exactly 30 days after she had left them. The alien delegates had prepared for this moment with the confidence that came from 8 centuries of successful expansion. Every newly contacted species eventually accepted council membership. The alternative was isolation, and isolation in a dangerous galaxy meant extinction. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as representatives from dozens of minor species filled the observer galleries. This would be a historic moment, they believed. Humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization would mark another successful expansion of the Council's influence. Chancellor Mordok's crystalline form caught the light as he stood to address the assembly. Ambassador Vasquez, has your species reached a decision regarding our generous offer? Elena took her position at the central podium, the same spot where she had stood a month ago. But something had changed in her bearing. The careful diplomatic posture was gone, replaced by something that made the nearest alien delegates unconsciously lean away. Chancellor, honored representatives, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. My government has carefully considered your offer of junior membership in the Galactic Council. The chamber fell silent. Even the holographic stars above seemed to pause in their eternal dance. We decline. The words hit the assembly like a physical blow. In the observer galleries, minor species representatives gasped in disbelief. The 3 major powers sat frozen in shock. General Takmor was the first to recover, his 4 arms spreading wide in a gesture that Elena now knew indicated confusion and anger. You refuse our protection? Our guidance? Do you understand what exists beyond your small system? Elena's smile was sharp enough to cut crystal. General, we understand exactly what exists. We've been watching you for 37 days. Chancellor Mordok's head tilted with mechanical precision, but his voice carried an edge that hadn't been there before. Watching? Learning, Elena corrected. Studying, analyzing. You see, while you've been planning integration ceremonies, we've been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in human history. The implications sank in slowly. Merchant Prince Veltar's robes shifted from confident gold to alarmed red. You've been spying on us? We prefer the term reconnaissance, Elena replied. After all, you spent 3 months scanning our worlds without permission. We simply returned the favor. In the observer galleries, representatives from minor species began whispering urgently among themselves. No newly contacted civilization had ever spoken to the Council this way. The very concept was beyond their understanding. Chancellor Mordok's crystalline features seemed to sharpen. You dare compare our evaluation protocols to espionage? We were determining your species' readiness for civilized society. And we were determining whether civilized society was ready for us, Elena shot back. The verdict is you mixed. General Takmor stood to his full height, his ritual scars seeming to darken with anger. You reject our offer and then insult us? This will not stand. The galaxy has an order, human. Those who refuse to join that order face the consequences. Elena nodded as if she had been expecting exactly those words. Yes, I thought you might feel that way. In fact, our analyst predicted this conversation almost word for word. She touched a control on her podium, and the chamber's central display activated. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, showing the territories of the three major powers. But this map was different from the one the Council had shown her a month ago. This one showed fleet positions, supply lines, and military installations in detail that made several delegates gasp. The Zephyrian hegemony, Elena said, her voice taking on the tone of a professor giving a lecture, maintained 17 primary fleet bases across the galactic core. Your geometric battle formations require precise coordination between ships, which depends on quantum communication networks that can be disrupted using relatively simple interference patterns. Chancellor Mordak's crystalline body actually cracked with stress, small fractures appearing along his arms. How do you know this? Elena continued without answering. The Kavari clans control 43 worlds through an honor-based military hierarchy. Your warriors are incredibly brave and skilled, but they follow ritual combat patterns that have remained unchanged for 2,000 years. Patterns that can be predicted and countered by anyone who understands the psychological framework behind them. General Thakmor's forehands clenched into fists. Impossible. Our honor codes are sacred. Sacred, yes, but not secret, Elena replied. And the Stellan Consortium controls galactic trade through carefully maintained market stability. Your economic models depend on predictable patterns and gradual changes. Introduce enough chaos at the right pressure points and centuries of careful planning become worthless. Merchant Prince Veltar's robes had shifted to a sickly green color. You cannot threaten the galactic economy. Billions depend on our trade networks. We're not threatening anything, Elena said with false innocence. We're simply demonstrating that we've done our homework. The chamber erupted. Representatives from dozens of species began shouting questions and accusations. The three major powers tried to maintain their dignity while processing the implications of what they had just heard. Chancellor Mordak raised his arms for silence, and his voice carried a new quality when he spoke. For the first time in Elena's experience, the Zephyrian leader sounded uncertain. What do you want from us? Elena's smile widened. Want from you? Nothing at all. We don't need your protection, your guidance, or your permission. Then what is the point of this display? General Thakmor demanded. Elena touched another control, and the galactic map zoomed out to show the space beyond the Council territories. The vast emptiness between galaxies where ancient horrors and machine intelligences waited in the dark. You're not the apex predators you think you are, Elena said quietly. There are things out there that could destroy everything you've built. Things that have destroyed civilizations before. You've survived by creating order, by following rules, by building systems that keep the galaxy stable. She paused, letting her words sink in. But stability isn't strength. Order isn't power, and rules only work if everyone agrees to follow them. Chancellor Mordak's voice was barely above a whisper. What are you saying? I'm saying the galaxy is about to change, Elena replied. You can try to stop us, which would be educational for everyone involved. Or you can adapt. The chamber fell silent again. Elena could see the alien delegates trying to process what she had told them. For 8 centuries, the Galactic Council had expanded through a simple process. Contact, evaluate, integrate. Species that refused integration faced isolation until they changed their minds or extinction claimed them. But humans hadn't just refused integration. They had demonstrated that they understood the Council better than the Council understood itself. And more importantly, they had made it clear that they weren't afraid of the consequences. Merchant Prince Veltar was the first to find his voice. This is unprecedented. No species has ever had a choice before, Elena interrupted. You made sure of that by being the strongest force in the galaxy. But strength is relative. She gestured at the tactical display still showing Council military positions. Your fleets are powerful, but they're designed to fight other Council forces using agreed-upon rules of engagement. Your economies are stable, but they depend on everyone following the same basic principles. Your societies are advanced, but they've never faced an opponent who refuses to play by your rules. General Thakmore's scars were dark with fury. You threaten war? We don't threaten anything, Elena replied calmly. We simply point out that the old order is changing whether you like it or not. Humans are in the galaxy now and we don't negotiate. We adapt, we overcome, and we hunt. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the chamber's environmental systems. Elena could see the alien delegates exchanging glances, trying to understand what had just happened. Finally, Chancellor Mordak spoke. If you reject our offer and refuse to follow galactic law, then you are outlaws. The Council has procedures for dealing with outlaws. Elena nodded. Yes, I thought you'd see it that way. Our analysts give you about 6 hours before you begin mobilizing your forces. She turned to leave, then paused at the chamber's entrance. One last thing, she called back to the assembly. You might want to check your military installations, trade networks, and honor guard positions. I think you'll find that humans move very quickly when we need to. As Elena walked out of the council chambers for the second time, she could hear the explosion of voices behind her. Representatives shouting orders, demanding explanations, trying to contact their home governments. They would soon discover that while they had been planning humanity's integration, humans had been preparing for war. But not the kind of war the galaxy had ever seen before. The hunt was about to begin. Admiral Thexva stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Geometric Harmony, watching his fleet assemble in perfect formation above the crystal world of Nexus Prime. 27 dreadnoughts moved into their assigned positions with mathematical precision, creating a three-dimensional pattern that had never been defeated in battle. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, long-range sensors detect no human ships in the immediate area. Their main fleet appears to still be concentrated around their home system. Thexva nodded, his crystalline features reflecting the bridge lights. As expected, primitive species always retreat to their nest when faced with superior force. Signal the fleet. We advance to Earth system in standard conquest formation. What Admiral Thexva didn't know was that Commander Sarah Chen's Ghost Fleet had been watching his preparations for the past 6 hours. The stealth ships hung invisible in the void around Nexus Prime, their crews recording every detail of Zephyrian fleet deployment. Ma'am, her tactical officer whispered. They're beautiful. Look at that formation. Every ship knows exactly where every other ship is positioned at all times. Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the geometric patterns form on her display. Beautiful and predictable. Signal the fleet. Begin Operation Chaos Theory. The Zephyrian fleet began its jump to Earth confident in their invincibility. Their geometric formation required precise quantum coordination between all ships, with each vessel constantly updating its position relative to the others. It was a masterpiece of tactical engineering. It was also completely dependent on quantum communication networks that humans had spent the last month learning to disrupt as the Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. They found no human ships waiting to meet them. Instead, they found something far worse: interference. Admiral, the communications officer called out in alarm. We're experiencing massive quantum static across all coordination frequencies. Admiral Thexva felt his first moment of doubt. Impossible. Nothing can disrupt our quantum networks. But something was disrupting them. Invisible human ships were broadcasting interference patterns, specifically designed to scramble Zephyrian coordination systems. The perfect geometric formation that was the foundation of their tactical superiority began to drift apart as ships lost contact with each other. Orders, sir? The tactical officer asked, his voice carrying a note of panic that had never been heard on a Zephyrian bridge before. Admiral Thexva stared at his displays, watching 8 centuries of tactical doctrine fall apart in real time. His ships were still individually powerful, but without coordination they were just isolated units flying in formation. Signal all ships, he ordered. Maintain position, and he never finished the order. Human ships began appearing throughout his formation. Not warships, but small, fast scouts that darted between the massive Zephyrian vessels like gnats around sleeping giants. They weren't attacking. They were just there, disrupting the careful mathematical relationships that made the formation work. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Marcus Webb was having the most interesting day of his business career. He sat in his office on New Geneva Station, watching commodity prices fluctuate in patterns that defied every economic model the Stellans had ever developed. The Stellan Consortium had built their power on predictable markets. They controlled the flow of goods between star systems through careful manipulation of supply and demand, ensuring that prices remained stable and profitable. It was an elegant system that had worked for centuries, until humans introduced chaos theory to galactic economics. Marcus touched his control pad, and another wave of apparently random trades flooded the galactic markets. Rare metals from the outer rim suddenly became available at below-market prices. Agricultural products from core worlds appeared in distant systems without going through normal distribution channels. Currency exchange rates began fluctuating in patterns that made Stellan economists reach for headache medication. "Sir," his assistant reported, "we're receiving urgent communications from Stellan trade officials. They're demanding to know why human merchants are destabilizing galactic markets." Marcus leaned back in his chair, watching the beautiful chaos unfold across his displays. Every trade was legal. Every transaction followed proper procedures. But the cumulative effect was turning the carefully ordered Stellan economy into something that resembled a storm at sea. "Tell them we're just conducting normal business," Marcus replied with a smile. "After all, they're the ones who invited us to participate in galactic trade." What the Stellans couldn't understand was that humans had learned to think about economics differently during their isolated development. Where the aliens saw order and predictability, humans saw patterns that could be disrupted, exploited, and redirected. They had turned economic warfare into an art form centuries before meeting their first alien. On the Kavari homeworld of Valor Prime, Dr. James Running Bear was putting his month of cultural study to the ultimate test. He stood in the circle of honor before the greatest warriors of the clans, having formally challenged their traditional combat doctrines. "You claim that strength is the only truth," James said, his voice carrying to the assembled warriors. "But you define strength so narrowly that you've become weak." General Thakmore's forearms spread wide in outrage. "Human, you dare question traditions that have guided our people for millennia?" "I question nothing," James replied calmly. "I simply point out the obvious. Your honor codes make you predictable. Your ritual combats follow patterns that any observer can learn to exploit. You're not warriors anymore. You're dancers performing for an audience that knows all your moves. The insult should have resulted in immediate challenge and ritual combat. Instead, James had crafted his words according to Kavari honor codes themselves, creating a logical trap that the warriors couldn't escape. To challenge him would prove his point about their predictability. To ignore him would violate their own concepts of honor. The assembled Kavari warriors shifted uncomfortably, their bronze skin flushing darker with confusion and anger. They were facing something their honor codes hadn't prepared them for, an opponent who understood their culture better than they did. "What do you propose, human?" General Thakmore finally asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. James smiled. "Simple, prove me wrong. Fight me according to your codes and show everyone that tradition is stronger than understanding." The challenge was formally issued and formally accepted, but as the combat began, the watching warriors realized they were seeing something unprecedented. James fought according to Kavari rules, but with a human understanding of psychology that turned their own traditions against them. He didn't defeat General Thakmore through superior strength or speed. He defeated him by understanding exactly what psychological pressures would cause a traditional Kavari warrior to make predictable mistakes. Back on Earth, Admiral Rodriguez watched reports flowing in from across the galaxy. The three-pronged assault on galactic civilization was proceeding exactly as planned. "Admiral," his intelligence chief reported, "the Zephyrians are in complete disarray. Their formation discipline has collapsed and they're trying to fight as individual units. The Stellan economy is experiencing what their own economists are calling impossible market fluctuations," added the economic warfare specialist. "And Kavari military doctrine is being challenged on their own homeworld by one anthropologist with a very good understanding of their psychology." Rodriguez nodded, studying the tactical displays. Humans weren't conquering the galaxy. They were doing something far more effective. They were proving that the established order only worked because no one had ever seriously challenged its basic assumptions. "Phase 2, his tactical coordinator asked. Rodriguez shook his head. "Not yet. Let them try to adapt first. The real lesson hasn't started yet. Across the galaxy, the three major powers were discovering what humans had learned long ago. When fighting a superior opponent, you don't attack their strengths. You attack the foundations their strengths are built on. The Zephyrian fleet was individually powerful, but collectively helpless without their coordination systems. Stellan markets were sophisticated but fragile when faced with truly unpredictable variables. Kavari warriors were skilled but bound by codes that could be turned against them by anyone who understood the psychological framework behind them. As reports of human activities reached the council chambers on Nexus Prime, the alien representatives faced a reality that none of them had imagined possible. They weren't being invaded. They weren't being conquered. They were being hunted by a species that understood them better than they understood themselves. And the hunting season had only just begun. 6 months after humanity's refusal to join the Galactic Council, Elena Vasquez stood once again before the assembled powers of the galaxy. But everything had changed. The council chambers bore scars from recent events. Burn marks on the crystal walls marked where Zephyrian delegates had lost control of their emotional regulators during heated debates. The Stellan section showed signs of hasty reorganization, with empty seats where merchant princes had been recalled home to deal with economic chaos. Even the Kavari delegation looked different, with several young warriors bearing fresh scars that spoke of recent honor duels. Chancellor Mordak's crystalline form showed stress fractures that hadn't been there 6 months ago. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its former mathematical certainty. Ambassador Vasquez, he began carefully, your species has made its point. Elena took her familiar position at the central podium, but now alien delegates leaned forward to hear her words, rather than back in comfortable superiority. The balance of power in the chamber had shifted in ways that 8 centuries of galactic politics had never anticipated. Have we? Elena asked mildly. I'm not sure our message was entirely clear. General Thakmor stood with obvious effort. His forearms bore new ritual scars, marks of honor earned in combat with human psychological warfare specialists who understood Kavari culture better than many Kavari themselves. Your message was received, he said through gritted teeth. Humans do not fight as we expected. Merchant Prince Veltar's robes shifted through nervous color patterns as he added his voice to the discussion. The galactic economy has adapted to human participation, though our analysts still cannot predict your market behaviors. Elena nodded as if these were perfectly reasonable observations. That's because you're still thinking like you're the apex predators in this galaxy. But apex predators don't adapt well when something higher in the food chain shows up. The chamber fell silent. In the observer galleries, representatives from dozens of minor species watched with fascination as their former protectors struggled to find their footing in conversations with humans. Chancellor Mordak's head tilted with mechanical precision. What do you want from us, Ambassador? Your species has demonstrated its capabilities. What are your terms? Elena smiled, and several alien delegates unconsciously shifted back in their seats. They had learned to be wary of human smiles over the past 6 months. Terms? You still don't understand. We're not here to impose terms. We're here to offer partnership. Partnership? General Thakmor's voice carried disbelief. After what you've done to our military doctrines? After what we've done for your military doctrines, Elena corrected. Tell me, General, how effective would your traditional tactics have been against the Void Hunters of the Galactic Rim? The question hit like a physical blow. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Void Hunters, machine intelligences that had consumed entire star systems in the outer darkness. Traditional galactic military doctrine had never found an effective counter to their adaptive algorithms. Our geometric formations would have been analyzed and countered within hours, Chancellor Mordak admitted reluctantly. The Void Hunters learn from every engagement. Exactly, Elena said. You've been fighting the same wars for 8 centuries, perfecting tactics against opponents who follow the same basic rules you do. But the real threats in this galaxy don't follow rules. She gestured, and the chamber's display activated to show the galactic map. But this wasn't the neat ordered territory chart the Council usually used. This map showed the dark spaces between the stars, the empty regions where ancient horrors waited for their chance to return. The crystalline plague in the galactic south, the entropy cultists spreading from the Magellanic clouds, the remnants of the builder civilization that still guard their abandoned worlds. How many of these threats can your perfect order actually handle? Merchant Prince Veltar's robes had shifted to a worried orange. Our economic models show that galactic stability depends on maintaining current territorial divisions. Aggressive expansion would destabilize everything. I'm not talking about expansion, Elena replied. I'm talking about evolution. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Evolution implied change, and change was the enemy of the stable order that had kept the galaxy peaceful for centuries. What do you propose? Chancellor Mordak asked finally. Elena touched her control pad, and the display changed to show human activity over the past 6 months. Not the disruption and chaos that the Council had experienced, but the careful, systematic process of teaching 3 galactic civilizations to think in new ways. The Zephyrian hegemony now has fleet commanders trained in adaptive tactics rather than rigid formations. Your ships can still fight geometrically when conditions favor it, but they can also break formation and fight as individual units when necessary. Admiral Thexfa, who had spent months learning to think tactically rather than mathematically, nodded grudgingly. The learning curve was steep, but our forces are now capable of fighting opponents who don't follow predictable patterns. The Stellan Consortium has learned to build flexibility into their economic models, Elena continued. Your markets are still stable, but they can now handle unpredictable variables without collapsing. Marcus Webb, watching from the gallery, smiled as he remembered the controlled chaos that had transformed galactic economics. The Stellans had screamed about market instability for months, before finally learning to surf the waves instead of trying to control them, and the Kavari clans have discovered that honor and psychological warfare aren't mutually exclusive. Your warriors are still the finest in the galaxy, but now they understand that the mind is as important a weapon as any blade. Dr. Running Bear, sitting among the Kavari delegation, wore the ritual scars that marked him as an honored teacher of warriors. The transformation of Kavari military doctrine had been painful, but ultimately strengthening. General Thakmor straightened with obvious pride. Our young warriors now train in mental combat as rigorously as they train with weapons. The combination has proven effective. Elena nodded approvingly. 6 months ago, you were the 3 most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. You were also stagnant, predictable, and completely unprepared for real threats. Now you're something more. What are we now? Chancellor Mordak asked, his voice carrying genuine curiosity. Elena's smile was warm for the first time since entering the chamber. You're becoming hunters. The word carried implications that rippled through the assembly. Hunters were adapters, survivors, creatures that could face the unknown and emerge stronger. The galaxy had been ruled by farmers for too long, building stable civilizations while forgetting that stability without strength was just another word for stagnation. The Council's original offer was for humanity to join your galaxy, Elena said. I'm here to invite you to join ours. Merchant Prince Veltar's robe cycled through confused color patterns. What does that mean in practical terms? Elena gestured at the galactic map, still showing the dark spaces between civilizations. It means we stop pretending that the galaxy is a safe place where order and stability can protect us from what's really out there. It means we start hunting the things that have been hunting us. A joint military operation? General Thakmor asked, his warrior's instincts engaged. A joint evolution, Elena corrected. Humans bring chaos and adaptation. Zephyrians bring logic and precision. Stellans bring economic insight and resource management. Kavari bring courage and honor. Together we become something none of us could be alone. Chancellor Mordak's crystalline features caught the light as he leaned forward. And if we refuse this? Partnership? Elena shrugged. Then you continue as you were. The 3 great powers of a galaxy, that's slowly being eaten from the edges by things you can't understand or fight. Eventually, something will challenge your perfect order that can't be negotiated with or reasoned with or bought off. And when that happens? When that happens, Elena said quietly, you'll wish you had learned to hunt. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For 8 centuries, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through strength, diplomacy, and economic pressure, but Elena was offering something different. Evolution through conflict, growth through challenge, strength through adaptation. It was everything their civilizations had been designed to avoid. It was also, they were beginning to realize, everything they needed to survive what was coming. Chancellor Mordak spoke for all of them when he finally broke the silence. What would this partnership look like? Elena's smile was sharp enough to cut stars. Like nothing the galaxy has ever seen before. Because you're about to learn what humans have always known. The universe doesn't care about your plans, your order, or your comfortable civilizations. She gestured at the darkness between the stars, where ancient threats waited for their moment to return, but it definitely respects good hunters. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than Elena had expected. But for the first time in galactic history, the Council chose evolution over stability, growth over order, and the dangerous path over the safe one. As the session concluded and Elena prepared to leave the chamber one final time, Chancellor Mordak called out to her, "Ambassador, what do we call this new arrangement?"